A satyr was traveling through a forest on a cold winter's day on his way back to his cottage when he encountered a lone human also traveling. Now, if you're not familiar with what a satyr is, it's a creature from myth or legend that isn't human at all, but it is part man, part goat. So when the satyr encounters the human, of course, they begin to speak, and they're having a relatively pleasant conversation about basic things, the weather, the seasons, patterns of animals, things that might interest two travelers on a cold winter's day. So as they're passing along, the satyr invites the human to accompany him to his home for the evening meal. And the man, enjoying the conversation and, of course, the promise of a hot meal on a cold winter's day, readily agreed. So as they traveled onward, occasionally the man would bring his hands to his face, like this, and blow on his hands. And the satyr noticed this, and after a couple of times of seeing this curious behavior, he asked the human, he said, "Whatever are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm just blowing on my hands to warm them on a cold day." So the satyr kind of nodded, and they walked on until eventually they came to a small cottage nestled back in among the trees. And both creatures quickly entered and got themselves out of the elements. So as the man is invited to take a seat at the table, the satyr goes over and he gets a pot that's on the fireplace, and he dips out 2 bowls of steaming stew. As he sits down, he sets a plate down, a bowl down in front of himself, and a bowl in front of the human, and utensils. And as the satyr starts to settle himself in, he notices the man scooping up a bowl, a rather spoonful of stew, and blowing on the stew. And the satyr looked at him strangely. He says, "Whatever you're doing." He says, "Well, I'm blowing on the stew because it's hot. I want to cool it off." So the satyr looks at him very seriously, then stands up, grabs the man by the scruff of the neck, and forces him out the door of the cottage. And the man just simply turns around and says, "Why are you throwing me out of your house?" He says, "I cannot trust any creature that blows both hot and cold air out of the same mouth." Well, the man left out in the cold is still puzzled by this, and he trundles off into the woods, and eventually, I'm assuming, finds his way home. Now, the important part of this story is that people really don't know you until they know you. And a lot of times people that actually know us really don't. We may think of ourselves and have a certain opinion of ourselves and assume that others do. But if we're not clear, people can make strange assumptions about what we truly mean.